We had our kids in most days. Out of, I think it was a couple counties, but we were one of the most, had our kids in the most in-person days. And I think that comes with a lot of mitigation strategies in place, making sure you're paying attention to all the details. And it also comes with a lot of community support. I mean, we couldn't do it if we didn't have everybody pulling their weight. Our parents were very cooperative, very supportive. Everybody was like, even when we turned to going all masking, which we didn't decide until the very end, because we had 900 kids in this summer. We had 900 kids in last summer, no masks, everything was open, and we were great. And then all of a sudden, August 1st, we started taking a dive. And I didn't make a decision until the August board meeting because I wanted to make sure we were going to have 2 weeks worth of a trend in the red. I didn't want to make a split decision like, oh, that was just a fluke. I learned last year not to do that. I learned this year, kind of take your time a little bit, look at the data a little bit more, have some conversation. But we've been in red since then. And so when we went to masking, everybody was making a big deal about masks, but we didn't have one problem at our schools. Everybody came, they wore them. Do we have to remind them every once in a while to put them above their nose? Yeah, but we have to do that with adults too. Right, and they want their kids in school. And they also knew if the kids wore a mask in school, they wouldn't have to quarantine for 14 days. That's missing a lot of school and a lot of work for parents. Yeah. So if we were masked, it was less quarantine days. If after 5 days, if you were unsymptomatic, you could get tested and come back after day 7, which is huge, big difference, for the unvaccinated kids. And I think also in this community, I think a lot of it's relationships and trust. And I think they see us working collaboratively with our health department, our school system. Our nurses are through the health department, so they're not my employees. You know what I mean? That makes a big difference. And I think if they see that you're doing it in good faith, then you're going to be giving them weekly updates, and you're going to be having conversation, and show data like we have on our website. Every school, how many cases, how many quarantines every week. Being transparent, I think people feel more comfortable about a decision when you're being transparent. Yep. We're starting to give the vaccines out to our elementary students. Parents must be present. We are doing that. Some counties are not doing that. We are doing that. Yeah. We feel very strongly about that the parents should be present for a 5-year-old. 5 to 11, parents must be present. And we do it after school so that the parents can get there and do it a little bit later in the evening. Our problem right now is just getting enough vaccines in Talbot County. And they're coming. They're just coming slowly. We got 300 doses, but that's 150 kids. Because they have to have 2 for each. So, yeah. So, 300 sounds like a lot, but, I think having a virtual option, I think is something that we need to look at from here on out. We got a lot of good out of the pandemic too. We found that some kids thrived in a virtual environment. We found that some kids did not do well, obviously. But I do think we're in a society today where a lot more people are mobile. A lot more people are working from home. They're traveling more, or they're on the go more. So I think schools are going to need to change for the future. We offered our families a virtual option this year. They're still enrolled in our schools. In the virtual option, we said we will continue to offer virtual option, not homeschooling, but a virtual option. And we did have about 37 people take us up on that. So, I think we can be innovative and creative when it comes to virtual learning. We don't have critical race theory as curriculum. It's not curriculum, We teach history. And we teach government, and we teach civics, and we teach Maryland state standards. Do we offer a racial or cultural diversity course for our staff? Absolutely. We have 25 languages spoken in our homes in this county. Our teachers need to be culturally aware of those different groups and just be more understanding of the needs, and maybe it could be whether a child gives you eye contact or not, and maybe that's something they don't do in their culture. It's not being disrespectful. So I'm just using that as an example. So we do cultural diversity training for all of our staff, And it really does talk about your implicit bias and your, explicit bias, because we all have it. So we do talk about that, and at times, we also talk about race and bias, because really, when you think about it, education was designed for white men by white men, and so we do need to be very well aware of that. Now, if we were in a perfect world, we shouldn't have to celebrate Black History Month. Black history should be in our history. But it's always been excluded, so we're working on it, and we're also working on making sure our textbooks show diversity in our textbooks, for our kids to see themselves in the textbooks, for our kids to see themselves on the websites of the links that we have to our curriculum. We also teach children how to make good decisions. We want them to be able to think for themselves, be critical thinkers, but be able to see both sides and be able to analyze both sides and then make their own decision. We don't tell kids how to vote. We don't teach kids how to side one way or the other. Our job is to make sure our kids understand that, be active listeners to both sides of any kind of story, do your little homework, and then make your own well-informed decision. And that's, to me, I would think that's what our parents would want us to do. So it's not an issue for me.
I guess so.
And parents are very involved in their children's education. I mean, we have stakeholder groups, we have a citizen advisory group, we have parents that, we just did a budget survey. Most of my survey responses were from parents about what do they want the money to be spent on, So I think parents should be involved. I don't think they need to be intricately involved in some of the day-to-day decisions, but the Maryland state curriculum and what's being taught, there are parents on those groups, so it's not like they're not involved. And I do think that they should be very well informed in what their children are learning. From what I hear, I think there's a couple issues. One is, are you being sneaky with what you're teaching, and are you really teaching our kids to vote certain ways and to think certain ways? I think the other thing a big piece of it is government control, especially with the masks, and government control there. I have heard them speak at some of the meetings. There have been a couple times where one of them has stood up and said, I want these 2 questions answered. Well, we just met with you, my assistant superintendent met with you for 2 hours before this meeting and answered those questions, so I don't know why you're here asking this question. Some people have been really angry about it, and some of the emails are really mean, and there's times where I just call people and I read their email to them and say, really? We don't need to get personal. Let's just talk about what is the problem, let's talk about what the perceived problem is. Is it really a problem? And then let's try to figure it out. There's going to be some deadlines coming up soon. As a matter of fact, the AIB, which is the board, has been now appointed by the governor, but they have until February to meet and talk about adjusting some of the timelines, which they will need to do, to be honest with you. They will need to do, because some of it will be impossible to do within that by 2026. And just a couple examples would be, one of it's early childhood, doing all-day pre-K and for every student ages 3 and 4, using community partners. It's an excellent goal. Don't get me wrong. We're very fortunate in Talbot County. I have all-day pre-K now because the county council has helped me have that. I have the space. I'm able to do it. But you get school districts like Prince George's and Baltimore and Montgomery County. They don't have space for all-day pre-K. And they don't have enough community people to help them make it work that quickly. Another one is the career ladder, for teachers. Right now, we are in the middle of a teacher shortage. I am right now down 12 certified teachers. Never, ever, and I've been in Talbot County since 1988, have we had 12 openings during the school year. I have 12 openings with no applications on file. So for them to say they want teachers to have higher standards and to become nationally certified and to raise the pay, I think they're moving too fast going up together, where they're going to have to scaffold it to where we start getting more people attracted to the profession and get into the profession, and then take a look at some of the standards. We only produce In our colleges in Maryland, we only produce about 40% of the teachers we need. So we rely on all those other states to send us teachers. And they're not doing that. Quite frankly, they used to from Pennsylvania, but they're not doing that anymore. What it says is if a teacher, they want to get the starting salary up to $60,000. Which is great, but then the teacher would only teach 60% of the day, which means I'm going to need more teachers. I do think the funding formula is another one that needs to be explored. And I think being in a pandemic right now and the economy the way it is, you're going to see where they're going to have to prioritize. And what would be prioritized? I do not know that answer, but I certainly hope that they talk to educators when they ask that question. I don't get a car, I don't get a check, and I don't get a vacation, but I am truly honored. I've always been a person that, I'm a Rotarian, service above self, and I really live my life that way. So it's nice to be honored, but I don't expect anything. I get it every day when I go and sit down and eat with a 5-year-old. It's a very humbling experience. You should try it sometime, Dave. But, that's what it's really all about.